I was standing on the porch of a house I helped buy when my daughter-in-law cracked open the door just wide enough to let the insult slip out. "Live less comfortably," she said. That was the night I learned what people really mean when they love your money more than they love you. The air in Lexington carried the clean bite of early autumn. Sharp enough to sting, but gentle enough to remind you that summer had not gone quietly. I cradled my warm cinnamon loaf against my chest like something fragile, something hopeful. For 30 years, I had baked it for birthdays, holidays, and every family dinner in between. It felt strange to be holding it now on a doorstep where warmth no longer lived. The door opened only a sliver, just enough for Melissa Whitford's carefully painted smile to appear. Her hair was swept into one of those effortless curls that seemed to take an hour to perfect. Behind her, golden lighting glowed over a long dining table set with polished silver and crystal glasses. I had imagined myself sitting there next to my son, laughing with my grandchildren. Instead, I saw only silhouettes and shadows. "Oh, Evelyn," she whispered, lowering her voice as if I were some embarrassing secret. "I think Luke forgot to tell you. Tonight is not ideal for you. Not ideal for me." The words faltered in my ears. I shifted my grip on the loaf, the foil crinkling softly, betraying the small tremor in my hands. "But he invited me," I said. 7 o'clock. He told me it would be a small family gathering. Before she could respond, Luke appeared at her shoulder. My son. The boy I raised on a teacher's salary in Bardstown. The man whose first apartment deposit I paid, whose graduate degree loan I subsidized, whose mortgage I had quietly supported for the last 3 years. He would not look at me. His eyes darted past my shoulder to the dark street behind me. "Mom," he said softly, "we are keeping tonight elevated. Some colleagues from the firm are here. It might be uncomfortable for you." Uncomfortable, as if I were a stain on their carpet, as if my presence would unsettle the crystal on their table. I swallowed hard. My throat felt tight, like my voice might break if I let it out too quickly. "I thought I was family," I whispered. Melissa smoothed the sleeve of her silk blouse, a blouse that probably cost more than my weekly pension check. "We just need some space tonight. And honestly, Evelyn, you should learn to live less comfortably. We need to focus on building our future." The words landed like a cold slap. Live less comfortably. In the house I helped them buy. On the porch where my grandchildren played. I felt the warmth of the cinnamon loaf leach out into the night. I nodded because I could not speak. My head moved the way a door hinge moves when it is old and rusted. I turned and walked down the steps, each one echoing with a humiliation I had never tasted before. The porch light clicked off before I reached my car. Darkness swallowed me whole. And something inside me shifted. The drive back to Bardstown felt longer than usual, as if the road itself had stretched to make room for the ache inside me. I kept replaying the moment the porch light clicked off, sealing me out like a stranger. By the time I pulled into my driveway, the cinnamon loaf on the passenger seat had gone cold. I left it there. I did not have the heart to carry it inside. My house greeted me with darkness and silence. I did not flip the switch. I walked through the living room, guided only by the faint streetlight filtering through the curtains. I set my purse down, leaned on the kitchen counter, and let the humiliation settle into something heavier, something darker, something demanding to be understood. It was not just the dinner. It was not just Melissa's voice dripping with condescension. It was everything I had allowed over the years, every quiet sacrifice, every time I convinced myself that generosity was the same as love. I drew a breath and opened the old oak drawer by the refrigerator. It stuck the way it always did, swollen from decades of humidity. Inside was the folder I kept hidden, labeled Carter Household Support in careful handwriting. My own handwriting, betraying how long ago I had accepted this role without question. I carried the folder to the table and sat down. The chair creaked under me, the way it always did, but tonight it sounded like a warning. I opened the folder and began laying out the documents one by one. The mortgage top-up, the car leases, Melissa's real estate marketing subscriptions, the children's tutoring program, health insurance invoices, the house pest prevention plan, the landscaping contract, grocery delivery fees, memberships to places I had never been invited to, payments for school trips I did not know the children had taken. I counted them slowly, my finger tracing the lines of each page as if reading a confession. 10 pages, then 20, then more. 131 active payments, 131 ways I had kept their life afloat while letting mine quietly sink. I stared at the total monthly outflow. My breath caught. It was nearly triple what I lived on. My retirement check, the one I had scraped together through decades in a public school classroom, had not been enough, so I used savings. Then investments. Then small pieces of my future I never expected to part with. I glanced around my kitchen. The laminate counter was peeling at the edges. The stove was over 20 years old. My slippers were patched with thread. The heating rattled every winter. And every year, I postponed fixing it because the children needed something more. Live less comfortably, Melissa had said. The nausea rose quickly. Not from the money. From the contempt. From the way they had taken with one hand while pushing me away with the other. From the way entitlement had replaced gratitude. My hands stopped trembling. They stiffened with clarity. I closed the folder. The sound was soft, but in the quiet kitchen it echoed like a gavel. Tomorrow, everything would change. Morning arrived gray and heavy, as if the sky itself carried the weight of everything I had uncovered the night before. I dressed slowly, choosing my navy cardigan, the one Luke always said made me look too old-fashioned. Today, I wanted to feel grounded, not pleasing. I poured a cup of tea, but it went cold untouched. My mind was already miles away, sitting across from a bank manager with my folder of truths. By the time I reached Blue River Savings Bank, the autumn air had sharpened into a brisk wind that pushed against me as though urging me to turn back. But I did not. I pulled the glass door open and walked into the familiar space. I had banked here for over 30 years. The teller, Michelle, smiled warmly at me. I managed a small nod. Ruth Delgado, the branch manager, spotted me before I could ask for her. 58. Tidy bun. Glasses always perched low on her nose. Ruth carried a calm air that had steadied many of us through financial hardships over decades. She waved me into her office with a gentle, questioning expression. Evelyn, she said, closing the door behind us. You look troubled. Sit. Tell me what you need. I placed the heavy folder on her desk and folded my hands in my lap to keep them steady. Ruth, I need to make some significant changes. I need all automatic transfers to Luke and Melissa's accounts canceled immediately. Ruth blinked, taken aback. All of them? All 131, I confirmed. She lowered her eyes to the folder, flipping through the highlighted pages. Her voice softened. This will cause immediate disruptions for them. Mortgage, utilities, schooling, everything. Is something wrong? Everything is finally becoming right, I told her. I need this stopped today. Ruth nodded, sensing the resolve beneath my calm. She turned to her computer and began entering the cancellations. As she typed, her brow tightened. Evelyn, she said slowly, I need you to look at something. There was a recent request to access your investment account. It was flagged because the signature did not match yours. My heart thudded painfully. A request? From who? Ruth hesitated. The name listed was Melissa Whitford. A cold silence settled between us. I felt it crawl up my spine like a warning. Melissa had not just taken my help for granted. She had been preparing to take control of everything, to legally step into my accounts, to own what was not hers. Did she succeed? I forced out. No, Ruth replied firmly. The bank froze the attempt due to inconsistency. But this was not an accident. Evelyn. Someone was testing boundaries. My breath steadied. Slowly. Painfully. Then add fraud alerts, I said. Lock down every account. Revoke Luke's access entirely. Change beneficiaries. Change security questions. Change everything. Ruth met my eyes with quiet understanding. Very well. We will protect you. As I signed the new documents, my hand did not shake. The mountain I had been carrying for years was finally sliding off my shoulders. When I stepped outside, the wind no longer felt like resistance. It felt like release. A storm was coming. Yes, but this time, it would not be over my house. The first sign of the unraveling came sooner than I expected. I had just returned home from the bank, set my purse on the counter, and finally poured myself a fresh cup of tea when my phone buzzed. One sharp vibration. Then another. Then a stream of them. So rapid it sounded like a small storm rattling across the table. At first, I ignored it. I stood by the window, watching the breeze push the last of the yellow leaves across my yard. Peace was not a feeling I was used to, but in that moment, it wrapped around me like a shawl. Then curiosity nudged me. I picked up the phone. The first message was from Melissa. Evelyn. Netflix is saying payment declined. Did you forget to update a card? The next came 2 minutes later. Also, the kids' tutoring portal is locked. Fix this, please. Fix this. Not asking if I was all right. Not questioning the disruption. Just another directive, as if I were still running their household from my modest kitchen. I set the phone back down without responding. Only an hour passed before the next wave hit. This time from Luke. Mom, the electric bill shows unpaid. What is going on? Mom, call me now. Mom, seriously, I need you to take care of this. We have people coming this week. People coming. Guests. Colleagues. Appearances to maintain. Everything Melissa had built her world upon. I put the phone face down and reached for my gardening gloves instead. The roses along the fence needed pruning, and my hands needed something steady to do. As I clipped away brittle stems, the phone buzzed again and again in my apron pocket. I let it. By late afternoon, the tone of the messages began to shift. The confident demands softened into strained confusion, then tightened into panic, then spiraled into anger. Mom answered the phone. Why are the cars flagged as overdue? We got a notice from the water company. Mom, this is serious. Mom, stop ignoring us. This is humiliating. Humiliating. The word stung, only because it echoed the very thing they had inflicted on me. Yet, instead of anger, I felt a strange, settling calm. In the evening, as dusk bled across the sky, Melissa finally unleashed what I had known was coming. Evelyn, if you are doing this out of spite, just know you are creating unnecessary drama. People will talk. You are making us look irresponsible. My jaw tightened at the phrasing. Making them look irresponsible. As though responsibility were a costume I had accidentally knocked askew. Another message followed seconds later. If you do not resolve this tonight, I will reach out to some people who can help mediate this in a formal way. A threat. A thin one, but a threat nonetheless. I deleted the message. Then I powered off the phone completely. Outside, the wind picked up, pushing shadows across the lawn. As I locked the back door for the night, my neighbor, Mr. Talbot, waved from across the street. Saw your son driving around late last night, he called. Seemed like he was looking for something. Something. Or someone. I thanked him and stepped inside, sliding the bolt into place. The storm had arrived, exactly as I knew it would. But this time, I was not the one unprepared. The confrontation arrived the next morning, not with a polite knock but with the hard, frantic slam of my front door hitting the wall. I was slicing an apple at the kitchen counter when Luke stormed in, face flushed, breath ragged. It was the look of a man whose world had tilted overnight. Mom, he shouted. What on earth did you do? I placed the knife down with deliberate calm. You should not enter a home without being invited, Luke. He ignored the warning. The bank froze our mortgage account. The car payments bounced. The utilities are overdue. Melissa is furious. Do you have any idea how embarrassing this is? Embarrassing. Always the same word. As if the greatest tragedy in his life were the opinions of strangers. I gestured toward the kitchen table. Sit down, Luke. He did not. He paced instead, running a hand through his hair. The veneer of his expensive lifestyle had cracked, and underneath it was a boy who had never learned to stand alone. Why would you stop everything? He demanded. You know we rely on these things being handled. You know how busy I am. I looked at him steadily. I stopped them because you told me to live less comfortably. I am simply granting your request. I am living within my means and allowing you to live within yours. His expression faltered. Mom, that is not what I meant. Melissa meant. It was a misunderstanding. A misunderstanding. I lifted the folder from the counter and placed it on the table. 131 payments, Luke. 131 ways I have supported your life. Your cars. Your home. Your children's education. Your wife's business expenses. All of it. He stared at the papers as though they were written in a language he had never seen. Mom, I did not realize it was that much. That was the problem. He did not realize because he had never asked. I continued. You make 6 figures. You and Melissa host parties, take vacations, join clubs, buy designer clothing. And yet I am the one living with a rattling furnace and patching slippers while you tell me I am not elevated enough for your table. His face drained of color. You are twisting this. No, Luke, I said, my voice steady. I am finally untwisting myself from years of being your safety net. He stopped pacing. His voice dropped into something quieter, colder. If you keep this up, Melissa wants to pursue legal action. She says we can prove you are not capable of managing finances on your own. I almost laughed, the bitterness rising like a tide. She already tried to access my investment account. The bank notified me yesterday. If you want to stand by her on that, be my guest. But I have every document, every signature, and every receipt. His mouth fell open. She tried to access your accounts. She did. And if she continues, there will be consequences far beyond embarrassment. For the first time, he looked afraid, truly afraid, not of losing money, but of losing the illusion that I would always clean up behind him. Mom, he whispered. I did not know. I nodded. That, Luke, is exactly why everything has to change. He backed away slowly, as if unsure of how to navigate a world where I no longer bent. The illusions had shattered, and he was finally seeing the pieces. The house felt strangely hollow after Luke left, as though his anger had sucked out the remaining air. I stood at the window for a long time, watching his sedan disappear down the street, wondering if he would return with Melissa, or with accusations, or with something worse. The quiet that followed was heavy, thick, almost metallic. I tried to read. I tried to knit. Nothing held my focus long enough to matter. By late afternoon, a soft knock startled me. It was not the frantic pounding of earlier. It was gentle, hesitant, almost musical. When I opened the door, I found my granddaughter Abby standing there with a plastic container of soup and red eyes that told a story long before she spoke. "Grandma," she said, "can I come in?" Of course. I stepped aside quickly, sensing the weight she carried. She moved into the kitchen and set the soup on the counter, her hands trembling slightly. Her long brown hair was pulled into a messy bun, and she looked younger than her 21 years. She sat at the table and wrapped her fingers around a mug of tea I placed in front of her, though she did not drink it. Instead, she stared at the surface as if searching for answers in the steam. "It is bad at home," she finally whispered. "Really bad. Dad is yelling. Mom is crying and breaking things. They say you ruined everything." I sat across from her, letting her get the words out. I imagined the chaos, the unraveling, the panic that comes when the foundation someone believes is theirs suddenly vanishes. "They kept saying you did this out of spite," Abby continued. "But," she hesitated, "I do not think that is true." I waited. I saw the folder, Grandma. The one Dad threw on the counter when he got home. I saw all the payments. I had no idea. None of us did. There was a tightness in my chest. Not pain, but relief. Someone finally understood. Her voice grew even quieter, and I found something else. Something Mom did not want anyone to see. She reached into her backpack and pulled out her phone. After tapping through several photos, she turned the screen toward me. There, clearly photographed, were documents bearing my name. Refinancing applications, preliminary loan forms, authorization drafts, all partially filled out in Melissa's handwriting. My stomach dropped. "Where did you get these?" Abby swallowed hard. "Mom left them on her desk. I heard her talking on the phone about needing to speed it up before you changed anything." "Grandma, I think she was planning to put the house in your name on a loan. A big one. One you would be responsible for." My breath caught in my throat. This was no longer entitlement. It was intention. Calculation. A plan to use me as collateral, to secure their lifestyle by binding me legally in ways I might never escape. I stared at the documents on her screen. Cold dread began to creep through me, but beneath it, something steadier emerged. Resolve. Understanding. Proof. Abby reached across the table and took my hand. "I do not want to be like them," she said fiercely. "I got a job at the bookstore on campus. I am paying for my gas, my books, my insurance. I want to stand on my own 2 feet. Her eyes glistened with conviction. It felt like a spark of light in a very dark room. I squeezed her hand gently. "I am proud of you, Abby. More than you know." She nodded, wiping a tear. "And Grandma, they might be planning to move away. Mom said she cannot stay in Kentucky if people start asking questions." I leaned back in my chair, absorbing the truth. The facade was cracking, and through the cracks, the real story was beginning to show. The days that followed felt like the uneasy calm after a tornado, when the sky looks deceptively blue, but everyone knows the damage has already been done. I went about my routines quietly, watering the plants, sweeping the porch, knitting a few rows each night. Yet beneath the surface, life around me was shifting. Word travels fast in Kentucky, especially in towns where family names carry more weight than street signs. I heard first from my neighbor Ruth Ann, who casually mentioned during our morning walk that she had seen a tow truck hauling away the gleaming SUV Melissa once bragged about. The next day, Mr. Talbot mentioned that the Whitfords had canceled their annual fall trip to Asheville. A day after that, my friend Marjorie whispered that Melissa was losing clients because she appeared distracted, disheveled, and, most telling of all, desperate. It was happening. The life they had built on borrowed foundations, on quiet assumptions, on my silent sacrifices, was finally forcing them to stand on its true footing. Still, I did not expect to see Luke again so soon. It was a Thursday evening, quiet and cool, the kind of dusk that turns the sky to soft lavender. I was settling onto my porch with a mug of chamomile tea when I heard the slow crunch of tires on gravel. A modest gray sedan pulled into my driveway. Luke stepped out, not in his tailored blazer or polished shoes, but in jeans and a faded sweatshirt. He stood beside the car for a moment as if unsure he had the right house. He walked toward me slowly, each step heavy, deliberate. When he reached the bottom of the porch steps, he paused, hands tucked in his pockets like a boy waiting for permission to come home. "Hi, Mom," he said quietly. "Hello, Luke." He did not come further. Instead, he reached into his pocket and pulled out a small box. The worn velvet edges told me exactly what it was before he opened it. "I brought this back," he said. I could not. I did not want to sell it. It did not feel right. Inside lay the vintage watch I had gifted him on his 35th birthday. His father's watch. A piece of family history. Something meant to be passed down, not cashed in. "I do not want the watch back, Luke," I said softly. "It was a gift." He shook his head, voice cracking. "I do not deserve it." Something in him had changed, not broken, but softened, stripped of the armor he had worn for years. His eyes lifted to mine, red-rimmed, vulnerable. "Mom, it is hard, really hard. We are trying, but everything feels impossible now. Without your help, without the things we got used to, we are struggling." I nodded. "Yes, you are. But struggling is not the enemy. It is how people grow." He swallowed, emotion thick in his voice. "Melissa is still angry. But I understand now. Or I am starting to." A long silence stretched between us before he finally asked, "Can I come for dinner sometime? Just me and the kids. No guests. No business. Just dinner?" I felt something open inside me, not the old willingness to rescue, but something gentler, honest. "I would like that very much," I said. "How about next Tuesday? I will make roast chicken." He let out a shaky breath. "Thank you, Mom." As he walked back to his car, his steps looked different. Heavier, yes, but steadier. For the first time, he was learning to carry his own life. After Luke's car rolled out of the driveway, I remained on the porch long enough for the tea in my mug to cool. The sky over Bardstown deepened into shades of violet and rose, the kind of sunset that settles into your bones and reminds you the world still holds beauty even after your heart has been bruised. For the first time in a long while, I felt no guilt, no panic, no dread waiting to pounce. Just quiet. Inside, the house seemed warmer than usual. I walked to the drawer beside the refrigerator. The old folder lay exactly where I had left it, thick with documents and years of unspoken expectations. I lifted it, feeling the weight in my hands, a weight I had carried far too long. Without ceremony, without hesitation, I opened the trash bin and let it drop. Paper hit plastic with a sound far quieter than what it symbolized. It was done. I made myself a cup of cocoa and sat in the living room with my knitting basket. The soft yarn slid through my fingers as I worked on a sweater for Abby. Each stitch a testament to the future I wanted for her. A life built on strength, not dependence. She had shown courage in ways many adults never do. I wanted to honor that. For a moment, I considered starting a sweater for Luke too. But not yet. Growth takes time. And this time, the next step had to come from him, not from me. In the days that followed, the house filled with a gentle rhythm. I bought myself a new coat the color of winter wheat, softer and warmer than anything I had allowed myself in years. I purchased a cashmere scarf too, something luxurious, something just for me. I wore it around the house simply because it felt good. One evening, Abby stopped by, after her shift at the bookstore. She curled up on the couch beside me, proudly telling me about her latest paycheck and how she planned to save for a small used car. Her independence glowed from her like a lantern. I saw in her the resilience her father had forgotten he owned. As the weeks passed, Luke kept his word. He came every Tuesday with the children, arriving without demands or expectations. Dinner was simple: roast chicken, mashed potatoes, green beans. Ordinary food, ordinary conversation. But each meal stitched us back together in ways money never could. He helped wash dishes, listened when I spoke, and never once asked for financial help. That, more than anything, told me he understood the boundary I had finally set. One chilly night, after the children had hugged me goodbye and run to the car, Luke lingered on the porch. He looked at me with something I had not seen since he was a boy. "Respect, Mom," he said. "Thank you for not rescuing us." I placed a hand on his arm, gentle but firm. "I love you, Luke. But love is not meant to carry grown adults. Love is meant to teach them to walk." He nodded. When he drove away, I stepped back inside, lit the fireplace, and cut myself a slice of the cinnamon loaf I had baked earlier. I sat close to the flame, letting the warmth sink deep into my skin. For years I had stood at the edges of my own life, giving and giving until I nearly disappeared. But now, in my own home, in my own chair, I felt whole again. The lesson was simple, but it took me decades to learn. You cannot buy respect, you cannot purchase love, and you cannot save people who refuse to stand. But you can choose yourself. You can reclaim your dignity. You can close the bank and open your eyes. It is never too late to come home to yourself. I ate the last bite of cinnamon loaf. Sweet and warm. Freedom, I realized, tastes a lot like this.